Greetings, APUSH people. Today, we're going to break down how to do the redesigned DBQ for AP US History. And a Dr. Dre beat makes everything better. It's going to be hard, but we got your back, so don't stress it. So, this DBQ basically stands for Document-Based Question. And the document-based question breaks down as follows.
It's the questions, it's the questions, boy, it's the questions, it's the questions, come on, the questions, it's the questions, boy, it's the questions.
On the most basic level, the DBQ question is going to be as follows. You're going to get a prompt, there's going to be a set of documents, there's never going to be more than 7. The recommendation for the College Board is 15 minutes planning, reading through the documents. We recommend while you're doing that to be taking notes in the margins, coming up with outside information, generating ideas, kind of thinking about what your argument's going to be, and then ultimately you're going to have 45 minutes recommended for writing this thing. So that's it, like on the most basic level. Of course, nothing's basic in APUSH. And one of the things you're going to need to demonstrate is your ability, or rather, your historical thinking skills. Skills. And one of the big changes is every DBQ will have one of the following historical thinking skills as its main focus. So you may get a question that is featuring the skill of causation. Basically, why does stuff happen? Lots of events in history have many different reasons. You're going to have to analyze the impact of those reasons, the long-term, the short-term reasons for things. You may be tested in change and continuity over time. What changed? What stayed the same? Why did it change? How did it change? You may get a question that is testing your ability to compare. You're going to identify similarities and differences between time periods, between regions, between different ethnic, social groups in American society. Interpretation, how events are perceived, you may be tested on. How different views between historians, how historical events and the interpretation of those events have changed. And then finally, you may get periodization. And that basically is, how do we kind of understand historical time periods? What are the turning points? Why do historians label things like the era of good feelings or the progressive movement? And you're going to have to analyze that. Now, all DBQs are always going to assess the historical thinking skills you see right there at the bottom. You're going to have historical argumentation. How do you use evidence to create an argument? You're going to have to demonstrate your ability to appropriately use relevant historical information. So, what is information to advance your argument? You're going to need to do that. Contextualization, they're all going to do that. Connecting events in history and making sense of the events going on at the time period that you're talking about. And then finally, synthesis. Connecting the ideas, coming to a greater understanding. So these historical thinking skills are going to be assessed in your writing. We'll get back to that in a moment. One thing I want you to keep in mind. The best basketball player, whoever you may argue, they're Kobe, LeBron, Michael Jordan, Kareem, they are practicing constantly. You could be the best APUSH student, the best writer in English, the best human being on earth, but you're going to need to be in training. And there is no difference when it comes to the DBQ. We are going to need to practice this, people. And so it's going to be a process. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is, a lot of you think AP stands for advanced placement. In fact, Keanu Reeves thought so. I thought so. And then, boom. Whoa. Change that. From now on, when you hear advanced placement or AP, no. It's answer the prompt. Because that's one of the biggest problems people have when they read a question, they don't quite understand what it's asking. So when you get your question for the DBQ, I want you to circle the main words. Figure out, do you know what it's asking? Is it asking you to compare and contrast? Assessing validity. Is this label in history correct? Make sure you understand and you're answering the prompt. Now let's go to the basics. On the most basic level, what is this DBQ going to do? On the most elementary level, you are going to formulate a thesis that answers all parts of the question and supports it with historical evidence. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. You are going to get a question, and you can come up with an argument, a thesis, and you're going to break it down, and you're going to prove it with your evidence. And that's where these documents come into play. That's where the DB, the document base, comes in, because you must analyze and synthesize historical sources and include outside information to support your awesome thesis. Now, a couple things about these documents. This could be a whole bunch of different types of documents. It could be primary sources, secondary sources, pictures, writing, text, diary entries, speeches, famous stuff, random people you've never heard of. But the point is to take all this material and to break it down to support your argument. Which brings me to my next point. A lot of people, one of the biggest mistakes besides not answering the question correctly, is thinking that the DBQ is an essay about the documents. Do not write an essay where you're saying document A is all about this, document B is all about this. The documents are there, ladies and gentlemen, as your evidence. As your boy in Training Day, Denzel, said,
"What can you prove, huh? Nothing. Where's your evidence, huh?"
That's right there.
you can't prove anything without those documents. So your analysis of the documents is to support your thesis. So as you're reading them, once again, underline keywords, put things in the margins, make sure they are advancing and proving your argument. Do not summarize the documents. Do not quote them. Do not explain them. Don't jump around from document to document. Try to make sense of this, and once again,
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Yeah.
you need to prove your claim. So that's kind of the basics. But we need to go beyond the basics. We're not in APUSH to be basic. In fact,
Story time! Tonight, I'm going to tell you a wonderful story, a famous story. It is called The Magnificent Seven.
and that's why we're all here, baby. We are trying to get the Magnificent 7. There's no longer a 9-point DBQ rubric. The number, the max score is 7. So how do we achieve that? And you already know number 1. Number 1's easy. To get that first point is basically,
To that I say, all right, all right, all right.
you'll get 1 point if you create a thesis that directly addresses all parts of the question. You do that, you have a solid thesis that's answering that, you're getting a point right there. How else do you get this?
What can you prove, huh? Nothing. Where's your evidence, huh?
That's right there.
Part B of the rubric is they're going to be assessing your evidence and your use of that evidence. Now this is a big change, and for some of you this is going to be difficult, but don't be scared. If you use the documents, we'll go over to this column and right over here, you can get a point if you use the majority of the documents to support your thesis throughout the essay. 1 point. That's old school. If you want to go to the 2-point category, in fact, forget the 2-point category because we're hungry. We're like the Hunger Games, right? We're going for 3. To get the 3, you need to give analysis of the documents, all but 1. So, you know, this is AP Calculus. There's usually around 7 documents. You could do 6, you're solid. If you do a majority, you're back over in the category 2. So if you do all but 1 and you use those to support your thesis, you get that point, but you also got to do this. When you are using your documents, you need to show at least one of these skills. You need to talk about what is the intended audience of the document. That's one option. The purpose of the document. The historical context in which the document was written, or the author's point of view. So if you do any one of those in your analysis while supporting your thesis, you can get the full 3 points. Now, it's hard to remember all those different things. What are your options? Well, there's a hippo.
Only a hippopotamus will do.
Hippo basically stands for historical context, intended audience, point of view, purpose. Any one of those hips, you do that, and you use that in your argument, you got that point. And if you do that for all but one of the documents, you get the full 3 points. Beautiful thing. So don't stress it. You could do this. We got this. Next is, it's not just the documents, unfortunately. We got to break on through to the other side.
Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side, yeah.
And you are able to get another point in the rubric if, in addition to providing evidence from the documents, you include outside info that supports your thesis. So if you have a document and it's John Smith and he's talking about how no one's working in the colony of Virginia, you can bring in some information about how tobacco would eventually be brought into the colony and indentured servitude. And if you can link that to the argument you're making, you got that outside information. Add a bit more of that, you got that additional point. So outside info is key. Don't forget that. Now I know what you're thinking. What does it all mean?
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
And another part of the rubric is contextualization. You will be assessed on whether or not you are connecting the events to the time period. Why does it matter given the time period that the question is addressing? So you're going to need to not be as specific. You got to take a step back and kind of make a connection to what's going on in American history during that time period. So if you do that, you can get a point. And then finally, as you're writing all this beautiful stuff, you have this evidence, you have these documents and the outside info and a solid thesis, and you're using these historical thinking skills, you're going to put it all together.
Cyber sexy Wendy, web walking.
Section D of the rubric, basically you can get a point here. Synthesize. Are you able, why does it all matter? And there's a couple of different options. There's 4 different ways that you can get this synthesis point. You can extend your thesis or modify it. You can show that you recognize contradictory evidence, talking about what different historians believe or what different time periods have believed or different sections of the country. There's so many different ways to fulfill that requirement. You can connect it to a different time period. In the third column here, you can connect your argument to a different time period in American history, a different context or circumstance, get a point there. Or you could bring in different fields, different subjects. And as long as it's relevant and advances and it shows that you are really kind of putting everything together, you get that synthesis point. So if you do everything right, ladies and gentlemen, you got 7. That's the magic number. And remember, this is a process. We're doing this for America. We're doing this for that college credit. Whatever the reasons you're doing, APUSH, we got your back. So if you need help, post a comment, ask your teacher. But if all else fails, give me a holler on the YouTubes, subscribe to the channel. Once again, thank you for watching. Tell your friends, tell the homies about Joe's Productions. Peace.